Hey everyone, welcome to our devlog video for our GMTK Game Jam 2024 entry, Space Dino Colossal Shells. I'm RKI3000, the programmer for the project, and I'm here with my awesome teammate, cctoad, who handled all the art, music, and sound effects.
Hello, I'm cctoad, and I made the art, sound effects, and music for this GMTK game. It's my first time not doing the programming on a game, and I gotta say I really like the workflow.
So in Space Dino Colossal Shells, you play as a diplodocus on a mission to clear out a snailian infestation on the moon. You're in this cramped little spaceship equipped with a grow gun. The idea is to shoot at the evil snail aliens to enlarge their shells. You then use your long dinosaur neck to navigate through the shell's obstacles, get to the snail's soul, bite it, and destroy the shell from the inside. Sounds simple enough, right? By the way, if you didn't know, a game jam is a competition where multiple game devs make a game in a limited amount of time, which here was 96 hours, according to a theme. The theme for the game jam was built to scale, and when I heard the theme I immediately thought of an idea I had a while back. It was an asteroid clone where you enter the asteroids to destroy them. Small ship, big asteroids, it seems like a perfect fit. But then, in our brainstorming session, things took a fun turn. Here's what our mood board looked like, but I'll walk you through it.
Yeah, when we were throwing ideas around, I remember you had that asteroid idea, but then we started listing big and small things, and dinosaurs and snails came up. That's when I suggested, what if you played as a dinosaur in a spaceship?
And then I thought, why use a spaceship to enter the snails when we could use the dinosaur's long neck instead, like a snake? We had already flipped everything around. Big dinos became small snails became big. The core mechanics of the game really started to take shape. The time difference between me and cctoad was about 10 hours, and since the jam started at 7 PM for me, and we brainstormed for 1 hour, the only things I did for the first day were the UFO controls, that I did not have to refactor completely mid-project, and also the neck mechanics. For the neck, I used the line 2D that spawned points every couple of frames and added a repeating texture to achieve the final effect. I then went to sleep and let cctoad start on the pixel art.
I started working on the spaceship's idle animation. We thought it'd look funny if the dinosaur was cramped inside the spaceship. I remember making the dinosaur look kinda sad at first, but then I added a single pixel and it made him look a lot happier. The UFO sprite came together, and then I moved on to the snail animations. That's when I suggested the snailiens name, and people really seemed to like it.
Yes! On the second day, I worked on the neck collisions. I didn't want the neck to kill you, like in Snake, but just to stop you. To do this, I spawned invisible rigid bodies every couple of frames. I then linked the position of the rigid bodies to the positions of the line 2D points of the neck. So it looked like you were nudging the neck, but you were actually just nudging a couple of spheres. That's why I chose rigid bodies and not static objects. After spending some time implementing cctoad's UFO sprites, I realized that right now the dinosaur was still in the spaceship when you went to neck mode, so cctoad got working on the dino head sprite and the biting animation. Initially, we were just going to make the dinosaur look like a snake while in neck mode, but then I said that it would be really cool if we could actually move in 360 degrees, and to reflect that, I suggested to make the dinosaur head spin like a corkscrew. cctoad made it happen, and this is what it looks like in the end. cctoad also made the neck sprite for the dino. Finally, I added the ability to go back into the ship while in neck mode, which looks like this in the final game. The reason it looks so satisfying is because it gets faster and faster the closer you get to the ship, and there's a lot of screen shake.
Meanwhile, I was polishing up the UFO sprite and started on the big shell. We did have a bit of a misunderstanding at first. I thought the snails would come from the sides of the screen on the moon rock, and RKI thought that they would come just floating in space. In the end, we implemented both ideas. I finished up the big shell sprite, which really started bringing the game's visual identity together.
Once I had the big shell art, I programmed the gun that the dino would use to enlarge the snail shells, which we called the grow gun. I made it so that when you shoot the snailian entity, they play a Mario-like growing animation, and when this animation finishes, I seamlessly spawn in the level entity, assigning it to the same position and rotation, and then delete the snailian entity. By doing this, the level will change every time, since it will be at a different rotation every time, which makes the gameplay more varied. But man, figuring out what the inside of the shell would look like, it took a long time. We tried different approaches before settling on the final design.
Yeah, that was a challenge. We first took multiple attempts for the shell background, eventually deciding on this. Then, for the obstacles in the shell, I initially tried making a tile set, but it didn't work well for levels due to the shell's curved design.
After experimenting with rotating the tiles and trying other things, I decided to use a box sprite stretched by Line 2D, and that finally worked. This did mean that I had to do collisions manually, which took some time. I also made spikes that send you back to the ship, as well as the snail's soul, the goal of the level. In the final game you can bite the snail's soul to destroy the shell. We also made it look like a flying golden slug. Around this time I also programmed the snail's AI, making it jump, slide, and get caught in gusts of wind to float in space. The snail AI was tricky, but it did make the game feel more polished. Also, this happened. I don't know why it happened. It happened. Let's move on.
I then made the button and door art. Initially, these were supposed to be just some generic buttons and doors, and you would bite the button to open the door. But I decided to make them matching red slugs, maybe to subconsciously connect them in the player's mind. I also worked on the grow gun, trademark, sprite and its animation. We ended up changing the lightning bolt from red to blue, so it looked less like fire and more like a cool energy blast. I also made, after multiple iterations, the moon ground and some asteroid obstacles, which gave the levels a much needed texture and atmosphere.
It was around this point that if you looked at the beginning concept sketch of the game and the one mid-project, you could see that the scope had changed dramatically. It was also around this point that I asked my friend Disappeared, who makes all of my thumbnails for my games, to make one for this one. Normally the process for these is that I give a rough sketch and the global idea for the thumbnail, as well as some screenshots of the game, and the results are usually amazing. This time though, I put more effort into the sketch, and the result was absolutely insane. This thumbnail is one of the best parts of the games, hands down. Really, thanks again.
Agreed. While you were polishing the gameplay, I was working on the finishing touches, like the moon's space plants and some leaf particles. We also finally added flying robot snails that flew around in space, making it so that there were more kinds of snails than just ground snails.
Those robot snails really opened up new possibilities for level design, since they grew bigger when shot with the grow gun. Thanks to this, I was able to better showcase all of the mechanics we had developed so far. And I think I made some pretty crazy levels. cctoad also made amazing looking background stars, and I added them to the background with a parallax effect, which helped make the game feel more dynamic and less disorienting, since before the background was just a solid color. On the audio side, this was the first time I added sounds to a Godot game, and it really made a big difference.
I used my voice as well as random objects around the house and edited them in Audacity to make the sounds, and made lots of them for RKI to use. Here are a couple now. By using pitch shifting, RKI was able to use my sounds to the fullest, the best example being when you retract your neck.
cctoad also made some music for the game. He made 2 tracks, the first one being the one you're hearing now, and the second one being a more intense version that plays during the last 3 waves of the game. I also had the idea to ask cctoad to make a separate bongos track that kicks in during neck mode, inspired by Super Mario World when you ride Yoshi. It was a fun little touch that added to the overall feel of the game. The day before submission was intense. None of the tutorial text was working, and I spent hours fixing it. It was really stressful, but I managed to get it all working in the end. 2 hours before the deadline, we were still scrambling to fix bugs and add final touches, like the ending for the game.
We submitted with about an hour and a half to spare. There were still a few bugs, the biggest one being the following. Early in development, I asked to make the bite automatic when you get to the slugs, for that way you didn't have to click when you got to it.
However, due to lack of time, my clunky implementation made it so that if you press the click button to bite on the same frame as the auto bite activated, it will not destroy the shell and you would just be soft locked, which got a surprising amount of people stuck. Overall, we were super happy with how the game turned out, especially given the time constraints. Since this video was made months after the jam, I actually have the results, and our game placed in the top 5% out of more than 7,500 games, with 40% of 5-star ratings, and lots of people that like the game. This is by far the best results I've ever gotten in the game jam, and I'm super happy with them. After the jam I went back and nerfed some levels, shortened the tutorial, and fixed a bunch of bugs. I also added arrows that would point to where the snails were since people couldn't find them, and it made the game a lot more enjoyable. If you want to play the game, it's linked in the description. Thank you for everyone who played it and left a rating to the jam, it means a lot to us. And a huge thank you to cctoad and Disappeared for their amazing work. We poured our hearts into this game, and we're so glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this little behind-the-scenes look at Space Dino Colossal Shells.
Feel free to leave a YouTube comment as I read every single one. I also just created a Discord server if you want to join. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.